All right. Quick mic check. Yeah, that's working. Great. So, hey everyone. Thank you for having me to have a talk here. In this nice event. I've been in this event for maybe a few months now, 4 or 5 events in total. And yeah, so I thought maybe I'm going to present you guys also a new topic. And especially I'm going to represent a framework which is not really represented that often, which is Angular as well. However, this, which is a good news, I guess, for everyone right now. It's going to be a bit lighter of a topic. It's more about the fundamentals, and we are just going to scratch the surface of Angular as well and some of the toolings. Yeah, so as the title says, strong types, strong front ends. We all have worked with, I guess, with a lot of front ends, and which become a lot quite easily chaotic. So I thought there is this fundamental which is about the type safety, and I wanted to tackle that again because surprisingly a lot of developers do not really care about it or just want to get through with their work. So first of all, I'm going to go a quick reminder about TypeScript versus JavaScript. What is the reason for TypeScript and why would we use that in general? Well, the obvious reason is type safety. JavaScript doesn't really have types, and you cannot check the types in the compilation time, neither in the runtime with vanilla JavaScript. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So with the TypeScript, we are going to discover the biggest issue, which is basically using any. Which then you would ask yourself, why would I even use TypeScript if you are going to basically ignore the types again? So I would call it the any trap. The TypeScript language.org, the documentation says clearly, don't use any unless you're migrating from JavaScript. So basically, any is bad. But here's the thing. There is a lot of developers I've seen in my career who are not just using, I would say, any, but something called a fake any. I like to call it a fake any. So given this example, we want to log the pet status. As you see, you have the any, which in the most applications, you will get a ESLint error, and that annoys the developer because the CI/CD fails or whatsoever. So what the developer goes is he creates a type, which is basically satisfying the requirements he has in his application. Like this example, just giving pet, making it an object, a type of object with status as string. And I would call this a fake any because, yeah, you're gonna get rid of the ESLint error, but there is no real type safety. Instead, you would want to always use the actual types, which in this case would be pet, for example. And the reason why you would want to have this is, let's say, for some reason, the backend changes or the data or the library or whatsoever, it changes and status is no longer existing. So you wouldn't get a compile error, neither a runtime error, because undefined is a thing in JavaScript, as we all know. And yeah, so instead, if you use the appropriate type, and if the type gets updated, whether by updating the library or the types manually and so on, you would get an issue like this one, and at least a compile time error. Yeah, so I would get into one of the biggest questions I had always when giving a certain training or whatsoever in a company, which is, when should you define types? I do have a strong opinion on it, but feel free to challenge me afterwards. I would love to hear your opinions on it. I did try to express my opinion on Reddit as well a few weeks ago to see what kind of challenges are there and whether I could still hold my standpoint or not. So basically, it says never. You shouldn't really define types Of course, there is going to be exception. I'm talking general. Usually don't tend to define types for everything. So I would say there is mainly two kind of types in the front end, which is, first of all, the front end related types. We'll get into it in a bit. And also there is the other types, which are the DTOs, which are defined by the backend itself. Getting into the front end related types, you will have types using for front end features, which are like UI components or utility functions or services or whatsoever. You will probably need types which are not going to be defined in the backend. So somehow you do need to define it in the front end. And then we do have the extended types, which is basically you have a certain type already there, just from the back, let's say from a library or whatsoever, and you want to either limit it or extend it or whatsoever. And for that, you could extend a certain type or even modify it using, for instance, omit or whatsoever. Yeah, and those kinds of types, in my opinion, that's why I said at the beginning, you should never define those types. Those kinds of types, I would usually put them, the pattern I'm following is to put them into a shared module, which is basically a module. It could be also a library, for instance, if you guys are maintaining an own library internally, or make it just simple, having a shared folder or a module, and you would, you would put all those types either with the components and the utility functions as well, ideally, but in general, you put the types in those shared modules. That's basically my opinion, and why I would say, in general, you shouldn't really define the types in the front end. And one good benefit why I'm following this pattern, which helped me a lot with other developers as well. There is obviously a lot of junior developers. You would want them to start working with you and follow the type safety ruling as well. And if you have a dedicated place, or if you tell the developers that you shouldn't really define types, all types should be there already. If not, we are going to talk about it. That would motivate the either new developers or even existing experienced developers. That would motivate them into looking for those types instead of just going and define a new type. And I have experienced those kind of situations as well. So yeah, it basically avoids duplicates as well and makes it easier to have one basically source of truth for those front-end types. And when you change them, you would expect all the other errors to occur accordingly as well. And yeah, so the other point was the DTOs, the data transfer objects. I usually say it's the source of truth is going to be backend. I would be surprised if anybody else would tell me it's going to be in the front end, since you usually want to have the domain logic and the backend as well. There is multiple ways how developers work with that, or they try to sync their types with the front end, or as I said, the DTOs. This also, by the way, applies only to those backends which are not in TypeScript, so you cannot really just reuse those types. And yeah, so what developers usually do is just going to manually copy those DTOs into TypeScript and maintain them themselves. However, there is something else which a lot of you guys know already about. It is OpenAPI, also known as Swagger, used to be called Swagger. It is basically a standard format for describing web services such as REST APIs and all those types related to the REST APIs or the DTOs. And having this kind of standard way, which is commonly used whenever you work with REST APIs, makes it a bit easier for us to somehow get those types or functions automatically, and we do not to manually sync them anymore, which brings me to the next topic or tool, ng Open API. This is, in this case, specifically for Angular itself. The reason why ng Open API exists, side information, I'm the maintainer of the library, I'm working on it. And the reason why I made this library is because all the existing tools right now was lacking a lot of features that are missing, or they're not keeping it up to date with the newest Angular features, such as the HTTP resource API, which is already out by Angular since a whole major version, and it's still not supported by the most open API client generators. It also has a few other features which I wanted to tackle to erase those pain points I had, like for example, having the ability to have a multi-client architecture. If you want to have to talk to different backends, you can have your own client for each backend, and also scoped interceptors, which is a pretty neat feature in terms of Angular. Yeah, but if you wanted to check out more about the documentation and how to use ng Open API, I'm getting into the demo as well, but also the whole documentation, it will be in ng-openapi.dev. So let us get into the demo. I'm using WebStorm, by the way. Oh wait, I cannot really see it here. Okay. Oh, that would be actually a good idea. Oop. Come here, come back here. This one. Duplicate. Great. Okay, so yeah, basic. Oh, okay. That would be nice. Oh, not limited. Sorry. Zoom. Let's go 125. A bit more. 150. Better? Or should I do a bit more? You guys in the back seeing it? Yeah? No? Okay. Let's go a bit higher, 200. Okay, it's better now, right? I mean, it doesn't go bigger than that. I'm sorry. All right. Yeah, installing the library is pretty simple. npm install ng Open API. I have already done that. You want it as a dev dependency, obviously. And yeah, so I have a simple Angular structure here right now, Angular application. And I have done, this is, by the way, you guys can check out the same exact repository as well if you go into the documentation and the examples and you can view it. It has 3 ways of generating a client, which is basically using either a JSON, Swagger JSON, which is stored in a file, or if you want to, you could go ahead and use a URL or use a YAML file as well. Yeah, I'm going to just go ahead and delete this generated folder, which is going to cause an issue because I'm using it in the example view right now here with the pet service. What I'm going to do is I have a configuration here. This is some basic configuration. Well, don't care about the customized method name. That's some advanced configuration. We can remove that one, this one as well. We're gonna keep it pretty much simple, as in this case. So we have a simple configuration file. We go ahead and use either, we could go ahead and say ng Open API, and let's say minus -c for the configuration file. And then you would go into, oops, not here, source, and then clients, or was it app? Yeah, then clients. And then in our case, this was the JSON example. We want to go into the JSON client and say, let's get Swagger JSON. Oh, no, not Swagger JSON, sorry. It's gonna be the configuration. All right, and then you basically press enter and let it work, do the work for you. Yeah, those errors before that, it's basically of my Node version, so don't care about that. And yeah, so it basically generates you, as you see here, the TypeScript interfaces and the Angular services, which contains even the functions itself. So basically, you are not getting only the types, which is good for you. If you don't want to define all those types manually in your front end, you're going to get them automatically and get them synced as well. Whenever you update something in the backend, you can rerun it again. And in addition to that, you are going to get the functions in form of services as well. So you could go ahead here in the services, and each of those services basically would say one of those services is going to be a controller in your backend. For instance, this pet service could have been your pet controller in your backend. And as you see, you have multiple overloads as well to support all kind of typings of the Angular HTTP client. And yeah, those are the generated services. And you don't want to touch them, let them just do their work. And once it's done, you see it's imported here. You can go ahead and inject the pet service and then use the newest Angular features, signals, and convert the observable you're getting from the HTTP client. I know those are some of the terms which maybe a lot of React developers don't know, but I don't want to get into that kind of depth right now. But just remember, signal equals good. Yeah. So we are basically fetching the endpoint using the pet service, saying, all right, we want to find the pets by status. And also we have multiple parameters which we can use. And thankfully, they are also typed. As you see, you have 3 available options, which is available, sold, pending, and so on. You're going to just pick the available. And as you see here, the type is inferred here, which is a signal of pets, an array of pet or undefined. You could, of course, say also, because it's a signal, you could go ahead and say initial value. So instead of undefined, you are going to have a empty array. And the good thing, because of the overloads, you are getting also the appropriate type back. Yeah, and then this one is a computed signal. I just did it to just get the first 5 results. So you can go ahead and ignore it. You can go ahead and test the website with ng-serve. And this is, oops, let's say to stop talking. No. All right. So we have the live example. We can go ahead here and see the pet store service. Yeah, don't mind the names. This is the openly available pet store open API document, and it will basically fetch everything for you. And yeah, you have it basically pretty much easy to work with it in front end. And you don't have to manually sync any API endpoints or the typings and so on. And the nice part is you can also attach it to your CI/CD pipeline. So whenever even a backend engineer does only his own part or changes in the backend, so it gets synced in the pipeline again. So if anything breaks, it will not deploy and tell the developer that something broke. And yeah, so one thing I would love to add as well, I forgot, is to configure your client. Obviously, in the app configuration, you can go ahead and tell it to, we gave it a name, which was the pet store JSON, and you are going to provide this client into the Angular configuration, and you give it a base path, and also, which I told you, the neat feature of having scoped interceptors. So if you're using all the clients, even though they are all the same, having the same base path, only the requests which are fetched with this client are going to apply the interceptors you're giving into those arguments. Yeah, that's basically it about it. Doesn't have, I guess, There isn't much more to say about it. It just makes your life easier. And as I said, you would stop defining all the types and functions in your front end manually and make it all automatically happen. So it eases up the maintenance of your front end applications. Let me see. And for all the React developers who would want to have the same kind of functionalities, there are some alternative tools you could take a look at. For instance, Hey API, huge tool, great tool, does a lot of support for plugins such as Tensec Query, and yeah, many other clients as well, Fetch, Axios, and so on. It also offers schema validations using Valibot or Zot schemas. And if you want to have the same kind of idea, but not only for the front end, for instance, any kind of language, or for the most languages, you could go ahead and try out the Open API tools. They offer a huge amount they offer the client generation for a huge amount of frameworks and languages such as Ruby, C#, and whatsoever. They have a lot. Yeah, that is basically it. Is there any kind of questions? Or yeah, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can scan the QR code.